What's going on, everybody? Thanks so much for showing up to another video on the channel, The Voice of Reason. I'm your humble host, The Voice, and today I'm super excited to drop our next series, which will be about characters that require a deeper dive and might be part of a much larger role in the Star Wars universe. Let's jump in. This is where the fan theories are going to be getting wonky and wild, but I think they'll still stay within reason. I'll be looking at small cinematic cuts and kind of directing to see their significance, because if there's one thing you got to remember, everything matters.
You are a Mandalorian. Your ancestors rode the great mythosaur.
Everything matters.
The songs of eons past foretold of the mythosaur rising up to herald a new age of Mandalore. Sadly, it only exists in legends.
But you'll have to stay tuned for more of that in the Armorer's Breakdown episode. Today, we're looking at 3 reasons why Paz Vizsla is more important than you think. The first thing I need to put in your rational mind is, why is Paz Vizsla on the show? And how exactly did he get here? We aren't offered too much information at all about Paz Vizsla and how he became a member of the Children of the Watch. What we do know is that his house, House Vizsla, was a very powerful and respected house, garnering the first Mandalorian Jedi, Tar Vizsla, and the creator of the ever-important Darksaber. The Darksaber is said to be the key to leading the people of Mandalore. After Tar Vizsla's death, his lightsaber taken to the Jedi Temple, but was stolen and returned to its rightful people of House Vizsla. Now, after the Mandalorian Civil War, where the pacifists won the war, House Vizsla was exiled and had to regroup on the habitable moon of Concordia.
I grew up there, on that moon. Concordia.
We know that Pre Vizsla was the last member of House Vizsla to use the Darksaber, and boy was he ruthless with it, taking on the likes of Obi-Wan, Ahsoka Tano, well, her younger version, because her older version is OP as hell. And finally, where Pre Vizsla finally lost was against Darth Maul. Is it possible that after Pre Vizsla was defeated by Darth Maul, that Paz Vizsla decided to leave Death Watch and join the Children of the Watch at that point in time? We unfortunately don't have that specific information, but when you think about it, think about the mentality of a lone survivor. If I was a lone survivor of a Mandalorian sect after my homeworld had been destroyed, where would I likely go? I think that you would probably look for a similar sect of Mandalorians, if any survive, to regroup. And it's clearly not going to be House Kryze, because the pacifists won under Satine. So it only makes sense that somebody who lost wouldn't join their enemy in terms of reestablishing the Mandalorian core. So that's why I think it makes sense for Paz Vizsla to look for a different option where he could possibly be the leader eventually. Number 1. We're first introduced to Paz Vizsla when Mando returns from completing a mission for the client. We see multiple Mandalorians enter the Armorer's Forge room as Mando returns with a Camtono. Paz walks in as the Camtono is opened, exposing the Empire symbol on a mountain of Beskar that Din has returned.
These were cast in an Imperial smelter. These are the spoils of the Great Purge. The reason that we live hidden like sand rats.
Paz here is very upset. He challenges Mando for working with the Empire. He's trying to make him feel guilty by association. But it's clear, at least if you look at it from Mando's perspective, that he's like, hey, I got a job from Grief Karga. He connected me with one guy, and then I did the job that he asked. So Mando's probably like, why is this dude tripping out so much? It doesn't make any sense. And to be honest, it doesn't make much sense, because we even have earlier on episode 1, the client stating that this Beskar would be better if it was back with its own people.
The Beskar belongs back into the hands of a Mandalorian.
And the armorer kind of echoes the same sentiment when she says,
This was gathered in the Great Purge. It is good it is back with the tribe.
Yes.
Paz then argues with Mando and says, our strength was once in our numbers, now we live in the shadows and only come above ground one at a time.
Our strength was once in our numbers. Now we live in the shadows and only come above ground one at a time.
Secrecy is our survival. Our survival is our strength.
Our world was shattered by the Empire with whom this coward shares a table.
Our world was shattered by the Empire with whom this coward shares tables.
And here he's referencing Mando. And if you can see in this episode, in this scene right here, you can see how mad Paz Vizsla is, because he doesn't just pull out his knife or push Mando. He goes straight for the helmet removal, which we know is number 1 excommunicado, you cannot come back. He goes straight for the helmet, right? To kind of stop the whole fight, the armorer jumps in and says, the Emperor is no longer, and the Beskar has returned. When one chooses to walk the way of the Mandalore, you are both hunter and prey.
The Empire is no longer, and the Beskar has returned. When one chooses to walk the way of the Mandalore, you are both hunter and prey.
How can one be a coward if one chooses this way of life?
How can one be a coward if one chooses this way of life?
Which makes perfect sense to de-escalate the entire situation. She's pretty much telling Paz Vizsla, how can Mando be a coward? You're saying he's a coward because he worked with the enemy. How can he be a coward if he chooses to live by the creed? By then, if Paz accepts this logic, of saying Mando's a coward, then all Mandalorians are therefore cowards who follow the creed. So the armor is trying to bring some rational thought to Paz, being like, yo, dude, calm down. You need to relax, because look at all these millions of dollars worth of Beskar. That's really what she's thinking. And I think something was made very clear to me in this whole scene, and that's Paz is just jealous. We're only introduced to why he's jealous a bit later. So after the scene, just the way the whole scene is filmed, we go back to the bar where Greef Karga is. Greef Karga explains the general feeling other bounty hunters have after Mando completed the Grogu mission. Check this out.
They all hate you, Mando, because you're a legend.
How many of them had tracking fobs?
Phew. All of them. All of them! But not one of them closed the deal. Only you, Mando. Only you.
I think that this established Mando as the best bounty hunter on Navarro, based on the failed attempts by all the other bounty hunters to capture Grogu. And the clear reason why Paz Vizsla is jealous.
Now, how can I show my gratitude to my most valuable partner?
Now, I don't want to skip too far ahead and act like Paz has this individual animosity against Mando, because two things can be true. He can still have this personal animosity against Mando, but he can also want to follow the creed, which unfortunately says he has to protect the clan's welfare. So that's why at the end of the episode, and I knew this would inevitably come up, Paz did save Mando and help him escape Navarro by helping him escape Greef Karga and the Bounty Hunters Guild after Mando went back to save Grogu. But not because of his own selfish personal ambition. Paz likely helped because the armorer asked to save Din. After seeing Din complete that mission, the armorer now thinks clearly that Din is the top dog. You can see Paz Vizsla having a hard time with how the armorer is treating Din in a favorable way. Alright, number 2. We fast forward a bit here, post the events of Mando Season 2 finale, and jump in during the Book of Boba Fett. Now listen, I enjoyed parts of the show, but I know the general feeling of it as a whole. We pick up with Mando just finishing a bounty to gain access to some information regarding the whereabouts of his clan. Since they've been dispersed from Navarro, he's been trying to track them down. Now, we do know that Mando did injure himself with the Darksaber, but things are about to get much worse. Mando is able to locate the Children of the Watch encampment and finds out that only Paz and the Armorer are the ones who survived the Battle of Navarro. Paz lets Mando know, we are now 3. Paz administers first aid on Mando, which funny enough came from the Darksaber, and the Armorer asks how the wound occurred. Mando holds out the Darksaber. Now look at how this scene is filmed. We know that Paz previously fought Mando for thinking he was a coward for working with the client, but now Paz is holding the Darksaber, momentarily, to hand it over to the Armorer for inspection. We get a brief description of the Darksaber, and then as the Darksaber is handed back to Mando, look at Paz Vizsla's stare. He cannot get his eyes off the Darksaber. Now cue the next day, when tensions get further heightened. We know how Paz feels about the Empire, judging by his reaction to Mando working with the client. He immediately makes up his mind that this pacifist Mando let a tribunal decide the fate of a warlord. Paz clearly thinks here that Mando had a major lapse in judgment, and he even suggests that Mando should have killed Moff Gideon, and the Armor supports this notion. This is significantly important because it shows parallels of thoughtfulness in others. Mando appears to have more openness to trust the established government and that they will do the right thing. But I believe the Armor foreshadows here by her saying, we'll see, meaning that likely Moff Gideon is going to get off. Now back to Paz. Paz at this point is now watching Mando train and fail while using the Darksaber against the Armorer. He decides to challenge Mando for the right of the Darksaber. Paz gets his ass completely whooped, but we do learn something here about Paz's purpose and mentality. During their battle, Paz was able to disarm Mando of the Darksaber. When he picks it up, he states himself, "Fate has brought this blade back to my clan, and now fate will end yours."
Fate has brought this blade back to my clan, and now fate will end yours!
This shows us that Paz's journey is to bring honor back to his clan, but unfortunately, he loses here, and maybe realizes that he has to pivot or gain power in another way. So, you might be wondering how all this stuff came to mind, and really, it all started during the introduction scene of Season 3. So, in Episode 1 is really what made me think, oh, I've overlooked all of Paz Vizsla's character. We opened the third scene of Mandalorian with the Armorer making a foundling's helmet. Interesting choice of colors because this helmet... Wait a second. Look at Paz Vizsla's helmet now. Look at the new helmet. I will show you here very clearly that this ceremony is not for a random foundling, but this is for Paz Vizsla's foundling. And I think there's a few reasons why we are being introduced to the foundling. This shows us that the Mandalorian tradition of the Creed and the formal ceremony, which is something we haven't seen in the past. Paz is kind of hitting two birds with one stone here. He's raising a foundling, which is his duty as a Mandalorian, but also having a direct competitor to Grogu. And I think this is the biggest part that's being overlooked. Grogu is pretty tiny, therefore, if I was Paz, I'd be thinking, if I can't defeat Mando myself, I'll have to wait until the Darksaber is no longer in his hands, and then a foundling versus foundling battle could occur between Grogu and Paz's foundling, and we all know what would likely happen here. Think Force user Maul versus Pre Vizsla. But I do think that Paz is plotting because he also knows Mando is an apostate and likely believes the Armorer's theories of Mandalore being poisoned. and therefore he is preparing his lineage to be the next leaders of the Children of the Watch, since Mando, in his mind, will not be able to bathe in the waters of Mandalore, as the armor has foretold the planet is poisoned. Therefore, to Paz, he's thinking, I gotta put all my ducks in a row, because I'll be the next to hold down the Children of the Watch. Those are my thoughts on Paz Vizsla, and I think that the next couple episodes, we will start to see it more clearly of how he's scheming for the future. And there it is. 3 reasons why I think Paz Vizsla's more important than you think. Do you think that Paz will continue to challenge Mando? Do you think that the foundling is Paz Vizsla's foundling? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you're wondering if Mando is worthy of the Darksaber, make sure to subscribe, because I got a video coming out exactly on his worthiness. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, everything matters. We can also see how Paz Vizsla reacts when Mando returns from the living waters. Mando hands him the vial of the water as proof, and you can see that Paz Vizsla's just like, dude, get the hell out of here. And it doesn't help that he sees one of his former rivals, or the reason why House Vizsla lost the Mandalorian Civil War. He sees face to face Bo-Katan Kryze. Paz Vizsla asks, Night Owl, identify yourself. And if we're assuming, because we don't really know Paz Vizsla's backstory, if we're assuming that he was on Concordia with Death Watch, he would have ran into Bo-Katan for sure. Alright, so my predictions for Paz Vizsla's character are relatively simple. I think he's going to continue to get more and more jealous. I think that the Armorer prefers Din over him. I think he notices that because he was kind of put in charge of protection of the base, and then when Mando comes back, he's just so quickly forgotten, like moved to the side back to the silver medal, right? 2nd place. So I think that eventually he's going to pee him off, and he's going to look for some backing from the former Empire, meaning Moff Gideon or Thrawn, and he's going to kind of betray Din and Bo-Katan to kind of try to gain some leverage and power over them. This leads me to believe that she's running out of some of that water, whatever it's used, maybe to purify the Beskar, or just as kind of like a ritual. It's possible that she's running out of that, and Mando's going to bring more of that back, and that's pretty much what's going to help her continue to make armor, continue to repair the armor, etc. So she's going to be very thankful. Sorry, I just scratched my foot. I got super itchy.
I bring proof.
He speaks the truth.
Thank you so much for tuning in on the bonus features. I'm glad that we were accurate in one of our previous predictions. Let's move forward to be accurate on the next one.